On a cold Sunday morning, a baby girl was dumped like yesterday's garbage at the rusty gate of a tiny village church. She wasn't wrapped in silk or laid in a basket of gold, no. Just an old piece of cloth with holes big enough for mosquitoes to pass through. She cried until her tiny voice broke. Then along came Madame Agnes, the so-called mother of all orphans. People clapped when she carried the child. They said, "Ah, Agnes, God will bless you. You are a saint." Of course, the villagers loved drama more than their own cooking. But you know time. Time has a way of washing fake paint off a wall. That little girl, they named her Amara. At first, she was Agnes's blessing from heaven. Fast forward some years, she became free labour, the cook, the water fetcher, the market carrier, the one who woke up first and slept last. She wasn't treated like a daughter. No, she was the house help in disguise. Market days were the worst. Amara followed Agnes to the stall where they sold beef. She washed knives, scrubbed blood off the tables, smiled at customers even when her stomach was louder than the market bell. And Agnes? She stood there shouting, "Amara, faster! Use the hands God gave you." Sarcasm was her daily breakfast. Now enter a stranger. One dusty afternoon when the sun roasted everyone like plantain, a man walked up to the stall. Torn brown shirt, beard like he borrowed it from the bush, feet coated with dust. He looked like a hunter who fought lions in his dreams. He asked for bones, just bones for soup. Amara, with her bleeding kind heart, picked the best bones and even sneaked in a small piece of liver. The man blinked, shocked. "Thank you," he said softly. Amara shrugged. "Eat well. The bush is wicked." The man smiled faintly. "My name is Joseph." Lie, that wasn't his name. His real name was Jabari, a billionaire in hiding. The quiet boss of a mafia group so powerful they could shake a whole city. Months ago, his father was killed. Since then, Jabari had hidden in the shadows, dressed like poverty itself, watching, waiting, trusting no one. But the day he saw Amara bend to help an old widow carry firewood without collecting a dime, that was the day she entered his chest and refused to leave. In a dirty world full of lies, Amara looked like clean water. Then one evening, disaster came dancing. A quarrel broke out in the market. Someone pushed a lantern. Boom! Fire caught dry cartons. Smoke shot up like an angry snake. People screamed, ran, poured water, scattered everywhere. In the middle of the chaos, a finger pointed at Amara. "She did it! She pushed the lantern!" Amara froze. "Me? I didn't touch it." But lies in Riverbend Village ran faster than truth. By morning, the whole market had decided she was guilty. Agnes's husband, Chief Patrick, didn't waste time. With palm wine dripping down his chin, he shouted, "This girl has been bad luck since she entered my house. Useless child." Amara cried quietly at the back of the house, then scrubbed her face red before returning to her chores. Tears in Riverbend were like rainfall. No one noticed after a while. Guess who noticed, though? Jabari. He stood under a mango tree at the market square, watching. He didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. He knew the smell of a lie, and Amara's tears pressed his chest heavier than bullets. The following week, another trouble arrived, wearing white. His name was Mr. Lawson, the village moneylender. People loved and feared him in equal measure. Love because he gave loans. Fear because he collected them back with blood if necessary. Agnes owed him money for meat. The fire ruined her stock, and now Lawson wanted repayment. "Where is my money?" he asked, tapping the stool like a king tapping his throne. "Please, one more week," Agnes begged. Lawson chuckled, but his eyes were colder than a dead fish. One more week means one more interest. Chief Patrick, drunk but proud, boasted, "We will pay, don't shame me in public." Then Lawson's eyes slid to Amara, busy washing the bloody table. His stare lingered like a snake in the grass. Then he smirked. "There's another way," he said smoothly. The air went still. Amara's heart jumped like a goat. "What way?" Agnes asked, desperate for any lifeline. "There's a hunter in the bush," Lawson said. "He's poor but decent. He needs a wife. He can't pay full bride price, but he'll pay enough to clear your debt, with some change left." The silence was louder than the market noise. Chief Patrick's face lit up. "Which wife?" Lawson tilted his head toward Amara. "Her." The word dropped like a stone in a river. Agnes didn't scream, didn't argue. She simply looked at Amara as though a golden opportunity had fallen from heaven. "She's not our blood," Agnes said softly. "We raised her, fed her. She owes us." Amara's chest tightened. "Mama," she whispered, "I'm not a goat." Chief Patrick roared, "Shut up and go inside." Her step-siblings, Joy and Daniel, munched roasted groundnuts as if they were watching theatre. The whole market pretended not to listen, but Riverbend was listening. That night, the house was heavier than a coffin. Amara sat at the back door under the moonlight. She remembered the first day Agnes gave her Gary and milk, remembered how she ran errands for years without complaint, remembered caring for Joy when fever nearly took her life, remembered finding Daniel's lost shoe by the river. She remembered, too, how Patrick pushed her aside whenever food was served. Her throat ached. "Is my life really this cheap?" she asked the moon. Morning in Riverbend had a way of slapping you awake before the sun did. Roosters screamed, pots clanged, and gossip travelled faster than smoke. That was the day Mr. Lawson, the village moneylender and self-proclaimed helper of the poor, though everyone knew he was more vulture than saviour, returned to Agnes's stall. And he didn't come alone. Trailing behind him was Joseph, that same hunter with the same old brown shirt that looked like it had survived 10 wars. His beard looked like it could house birds. His bag was tiny, his sandals were begging for retirement, but his eyes were steady, too steady for a man that poor. Chief Patrick eyed him from head to toe and snorted. "So, this is the great bushman who wants a wife? You look poorer than a lizard in harmattan, but at least you talk straight. You want a wife?" Joseph's voice was calm. "Yes." Agnes tilted her head as if examining a goat at market. "And can you feed her?" Joseph's gaze slid to Amara. He didn't blink. "I will try. I'm not rich, but I'll try." Amara's stomach twisted. "Try? Feed me? As if I'm a goat to be fattened." Chief Patrick wasn't interested in romance. He was interested in figures. "So how much is on the table?" Mr. Lawson cleared his throat, named the sum, and the number was fat enough to clear all debt and even leave a little for pepper and palm oil. Chief Patrick's face softened immediately, like palm wine sweetening on the tongue. Agnes's eyes sparkled like she had just found gold in her cooking pot. Amara's voice broke the air, calm but shaking. "Mama, please, I don't love him. I don't even know him." Patrick waved her off with a greasy palm. "Nonsense. Love comes after soup. Eat full belly first, then you can talk love." Lawson chuckled smoothly, like a snake slithering on a leaf. "The elders can bless it this afternoon. The hunter will bring kola nut. We will close the matter before the sun sleeps." Amara's heart thundered. She turned to Agnes. "Mama, please, please," searching her foster mother's eyes for even a crumb of compassion. Agnes looked away, her lips stiff. "Go and pack your small bag. Don't be stubborn, child." It felt like a knife inside Amara's chest. Her legs wobbled, but she walked inside. What bag did she even have? A wrapper, one faded blouse, a cheap comb with 2 teeth missing, and her small Bible. That was it. She hugged them close and wept silently into the cloth so no one would hear. Outside, the talking drums started. Not drums of joy. No, these were the drums of a transaction. By noon, the whole village was gathered under the giant Iroko tree at the square. Elders came with walking sticks, some just there to witness, others to taste the gin. Everyone else came to gossip, because who doesn't love free drama? Chief Patrick grinned from ear to ear like a man who had just bought a new motorbike on credit. Agnes tied a fresh headscarf and powdered her face as though it was her wedding day. Joy and Daniel munched groundnuts, whispering and giggling as if watching a circus. And Amara? She stood apart, small and quiet, a candle melting in the sun. Joseph arrived with his little bag. He bowed. He greeted. He presented kola nut and dry gin for the elders. He said very little, but every word came like it had weight. The kola nut was cracked, prayers were said, gin sipped. Then came the big question. "Joseph, do you accept this girl as your wife?" "Yes," he said firmly. "Amara, do you accept this man a husband?" Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The world held its breath. Finally, she whispered, "No." Silence. You could hear a pin drop. Chief Patrick leapt forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. "She is shy. She accepts. Don't mind her." But one elder frowned, tapping his stick. "A girl's mouth is her own. Her yes must be her yes." Mr. Lawson stepped in, his voice slick as palm oil. "Elder, the girl belongs to this family. They feed her. They house her. They decide. Let us not waste daylight." The elder sighed, looked at Amara with soft eyes. "Child, do you have another house to go to?" Her throat tightened. "No, elder." He nodded sadly. "Then let us not keep the son waiting." And just like that, the money came out, wrapped in clean cloth. Patrick counted it not once but twice, because greed doesn't trust. Agnes's lips twitched into a secret smile. The elder gave a tired blessing. Someone tied a red thread around Amara's wrist. Women hummed a song that sounded more like mourning than marriage. Amara glanced at Joseph. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were full of something that made her chest ache. He had expected her to hate him, and she did. But what she didn't know was that he had just pulled her from a trap far worse. When the sun dipped lower, Joseph said, "We must go. The bush road is long." Amara lifted her tiny bag. She did not look back. "If I look back, my legs will betray me." They passed the stream where she once washed clothes. They passed the shrine with red cloths hanging like angry flags. They passed the schoolyard where boys shouted her name and laughed, mocking her marriage. As the sky darkened, Amara shivered. Joseph quietly slipped off his old jacket. She shook her head. "Keep it." He said nothing, but later, without asking, he placed it gently over her shoulders. "Take it. The night is not your friend." She didn't reply, but she didn't take it off either. They reached a tiny hunting hut, a mat on the floor, a rusty stove, a bag of gari. Joseph boiled water, stirred and handed her a steaming cup with both hands, respectful. "Eat. You've not eaten since morning." Amara stared at it. Finally she took a sip. Tears stung her eyes. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why did you choose me?" Joseph's jaw clenched. He wanted to say, "Because I am Jabari, not Joseph. Because I'm not the poor hunter you see. Because I've watched you, and in this world of lies, you're the only clean water left." But he couldn't, not yet. So he said softly, "Because you are kind, and I will not harm you." Somewhere in the forest, a dog barked. Once, twice. Joseph froze, his hand tightening on his knife. He peered into the trees, saw nothing, but felt eyes. He shut the door quietly and sat near it like a guard dog. Amara curled into herself. "I am not a goat," she whispered to the hut, to the trees, to herself. And far in the shadows, two men slipped away to deliver a message. The hunter has taken a wife. The sun had barely risen when Amara worn her clothes. She needed to fetch water from the stream, but the only path passed right through the village square. Everyone knew what that meant. Eyes waiting, lips itching, tongues sharpened like knives. Joseph, no, the villagers called him Bushman, walked beside her with his usual quiet strength. He carried the water pot as if it weighed nothing, but his silence was heavy. Amara could feel it before it even started. That stinking mix of whispers and laughter that follows shame like flies follow palm wine. They had not even reached the market stalls when the first voice cut the air. "NN! CO!" "The chief's adopted daughter finally found her match," shouted Mama Eka, the pepper seller, loud enough for half the square to hear. Another woman, slapping her thigh, added, "Hunter's wife. Better start chasing rats, because bush yam won't cook itself." The women burst into laughter, the kind that doesn't just scratch, it claws at your bones. Children, always eager for free entertainment, joined in. They ran around them, clapping and singing. "Amara married the bushman. He will feed her bush yam. No gold bangles for her hand, only raffia rope to dangle. Bam!" Some women shook their heads and clicked their tongues. "Poor thing," they muttered, as if pity was seasoning for their insults. Amara lowered her head. She wanted the ground to open up and swallow her. She could not defend herself. Her voice was locked tight in her throat. A man reeking of palm wine staggered forward, grinning with rotten teeth. "Hunter, did you pay bride price with rabbit skin or with monkey tails?" The square exploded with laughter. Amara's ears burned, her chest was on fire, and her feet carried her faster, kicking up dust. Joseph said nothing, but his grip on the pot was so tight his knuckles turned white. By the time they reached the stream, she was sweating with shame. Even after washing her face, she felt the mockery clinging to her like smoke from a bad fire. That evening their hut felt heavier than a prison cell. Joseph cooked yam with palm oil and pepper, simple food, but the way he placed the bowl in front of her, it felt like gold. "You shouldn't bother with me," she muttered, her head down. "I know you hear what they say about us." Joseph tore a piece of yam, dipped it in oil, and said quietly, "I hear them, but I do not eat their words." Her heart trembled. She wanted to ask more, but she stayed quiet. She was not used to a man serving her food. Pride slowed her hand, though hunger screamed louder. After they finished, Joseph slung his hunting bag across his shoulder. "Where are you going?" she asked softly. "Hunting," he said, but there was a flicker in his eyes she couldn't understand. That night, Amara woke to the sound of rustling. On the mat beside her sat a loaf of bread, a tin of milk and roasted groundnuts. Her hands froze. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. Joseph shrugged. "A trader on the bush road owed me for skins." She didn't fully believe him, but she didn't press. Instead, she cut the bread carefully like it was treasure. Milk into a cup, added water, and shared it. "You don't have to share," he said. Her eyes met his. "We share what we have. That's the only way it will last." The words hung between them like a blanket softening the cold hut. The next morning, Amara decided to sell some of Joseph's rabbit meat. Maybe, she thought, they could afford kerosene for a lamp. Joseph frowned. "The market is not always safe." "I'll be fine," she said, tying her wrapper tightly. At first, things went well. She found a small spot near the yam sellers, spread her tray, and people bought quietly. But peace never lasted in Riverbend. "Ha!" A familiar shrill voice tore through the air. "Look at this sight, people!" It was Agnes, her foster mother, the same woman who had tossed her out like spoiled food, now standing at her meat stall with her daughter Joy and her son Daniel. "Is this not the same Amara I raised?" Agnes shouted, hands on her wide waist. "And now look at her, selling rat meat like a bushwife." Daniel laughed so loud a goat nearby jumped. "Didn't I tell you, Mama? She'd be trading dead animals before long." Joy folded her arms and smirked. "Bushwife, do you miss real meat, or is bush bone sweet in your mouth?" The crowd gathered, hungry for drama. Amara's hands trembled as she arranged the meat. She kept her eyes down, pretending not to hear. Joy strutted closer. "Maybe she can't hear us because her husband can't even afford salt for her ears." The market roared with laughter. Then, just as Amara thought it couldn't get worse, one man pretending to buy walked up. He waited until everyone was watching, then shoved her tray to the ground. Meat scattered in the dust. "Oops," he sneered. "Looks like the hunter's wife can't even protect her goods." The laughter was thunderous. Amara bent down, tears stinging, hands shaking as she picked up the dust-stained meat. Joy's voice sliced through. "That's what happens when you marry nothing." Amara tied the dirty meat in her wrapper and walked home, her shame dragging behind her like a heavy load. She didn't know someone was following her. His name was Marcus. No one in the village knew him, but he knew everyone. Joseph had placed him in the shadows to watch Amara. Marcus saw it all, the shove, the laughter, the way she bent to pick her meat with trembling hands. His jaw tightened, but he stayed hidden. That night, when Joseph slipped out into the bush, Marcus was waiting. "It happened again," Marcus said. Joseph's eyes darkened. "Tell me." "The palm wine cellar." He pushed her tray down. The crowd mocked her. She cried all the way home. Joseph's knife hand twitched. "Where is he now?" "In the lower village, still drinking." Joseph's voice was cold enough to freeze water. "Make sure his hand never touches her or any woman again." By morning, the palm wine cellar was lying sick. Some said the sickness was natural. Others whispered he was weak. But Riverbend loved gossip more than truth. Soon tongues wagged, pointing at Amara. "Have you noticed?" One tomato seller whispered. "The man insulted her, and the next day he got ill. And the meat seller's scale broke after she mocked her," another added. "Is that not strange?" "She's not just a hunter's wife," they concluded. "She's a witch." By the time Amara returned to the market, the air around her had changed. Women shifted their baskets away. Customers crossed the road. Even Mama Nanny, who once smiled at her, avoided her eyes. Amara sat with her tray of meat untouched as whispers buzzed around her like angry bees. "That's her, the witch. She'll smile in your face and strike at night. They say her husband is not even human. He's a spirit." Amara's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. She sat until the sun sank low, the meat cold and forgotten, her heart heavy as stone. That evening, when Amara trudged back from the market, the road felt like it had doubled in length. Every step was heavier than the last. She thought she heard footsteps behind her, but she dared not turn. Of course, it wasn't imagination. Hidden in the shadows, Marcus, Joseph's silent watcher, was there as always. His orders were simple: guard Amara from a distance. Stay invisible. Protect her, without her knowing. But that day, as he watched her shoulders sag and her head droop under the invisible weight of mockery, his chest burned. He wanted to step out, to silence the mouths that dared to laugh at her, but Joseph's orders were clear. No one must know. By the time Amara reached the hut, Joseph was waiting at the doorway. His eyes went immediately to the basket in her hands, still full. "No sales?" he asked softly. Her lips trembled. She shook her head. "Not one. They say I'm evil." Joseph took the basket gently and set it down, his jaw tightening at her words. He saw the tears gathering in her eyes, the way she was fighting not to break. "Amara," his voice was firm but tender, "look at me." She raised her eyes slowly. "You are not evil," Joseph said, each word like stone. "You are not cursed. You are not what they call you. Do you hear me?" Her lips quivered. "Then why does it feel like I'm disappearing?" Joseph's heart twisted. He wanted to tell her the truth, that every rumor, every whisper, every sudden affliction of her tormentors was because he was protecting her in the shadows, that she was only suffering because he refused to expose who he really was. But saying it would put her in danger, and he would never risk that. Instead, he reached into his hunting bag and pulled out a small wrapped parcel. "Here." Amara's brows furrowed. He unwrapped it slowly. Roasted plantain with ground nuts, still warm. Her hands trembled. "Where did you?" "Don't ask," Joseph cut in with a faint smile. "Just eat." She sat on the mat and broke a piece, chewing carefully. "Will you eat with me?" she asked. He lowered himself beside her and took a bite. For a brief moment the world outside didn't exist. The laughter, the whispers, the shame, it all faded. But beyond Riverbend, far away on the city roads, two men in pressed shirts and polished shoes were asking questions. They wanted information about a man named Jabari, and their path was already turning toward the village. The next morning, Joseph pressed a small bowl of smoked fish into Amara's hands. "Take this. Try again. Maybe today will be better." She didn't believe that, but she nodded anyway. She could already feel the weight of whispers waiting for her. And she wasn't wrong. The market was buzzing like a hive when she arrived. But the second her shadow touched the stalls, voices started rising. "There she is! The witch's wife!" someone hissed. Amara tightened her grip on the bowl, forcing herself to keep walking. But then, the voice she dreaded most split the air like a machete. "Well, well, well! If it isn't my old house girl!" It was Agnes, her foster mother, the same woman who had once driven her from the house like unwanted garbage. She stood proudly in front of her meat stall, with Joy and Daniel flanking her like guards at a palace. Agnes placed her hands on her wide hips and eyed Amara up and down with slow, deliberate disgust. "So this is what you've become, eh? Chief Patrick and I raised you under our roof, and now look at you, hawking smoked fish like a rejected bushwife." The crowd immediately turned to watch. Free entertainment. Daniel laughed loud enough for the whole market to hear. "Didn't I tell you, Mama? She would be selling dead rats before long. Look at her now. Bush girl confirmed." Joy smirked and flicked her braided hair. "Careful, Mama. Don't get too close." This is those who mock her. Ask the palm wine seller. He insulted her, and the next day, poof, sick. Laughter rippled through the market. Some women crossed themselves, pretending to ward off evil. Others leaned in closer, hungry for more drama. Amara swallowed hard and tried to walk past, but Agnes wasn't done. "Wait," she shouted. "Before you leave, answer me one thing in front of everyone. Are the stories true? Do you curse people at night?" The market went dead silent. All eyes locked on Amara. Her lips parted in shock. "No, Agnes raised a finger dramatically. "Oh, please, we all saw what happened to the palm wine seller after he touched your fish, and my stall ruined after I scolded you. Don't stand there and play innocent." Whispers rose like a swarm of bees. "She's a witch. Dangerous. Don't let her touch your goods." Amara's chest burned. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the bowl. I'm not a witch," she said, her voice trembling. Agnes smirked. "Then prove it. Stand here and sell your fish beside me. Let's see whose customers come." But no one came to Amara. People moved away from her as if she carried plague. Her bowl felt heavier than iron. The humiliation was complete. When Amara returned home, Joseph was outside sharpening his knife. One look at her empty basket, her red eyes, and he stood. "Amara, don't, she whispered, brushing past him into the hut. "I can't go back there. They don't just mock me anymore. They fear me. They think I'm cursed." Joseph followed her in, kneeling beside her. "You are not cursed. You hear me? They don't know who they're talking about." Something in his voice made her pause. Her eyes narrowed. "And who are they talking about, Joseph? Who are you really?" His gaze held hers for a long, heavy moment before softening. "I'm just a man trying to keep you safe." Safe. The word stuck in her chest like a stone. That night, Joseph didn't go hunting. He met Marcus by the stream. "They're here," Marcy whispered. Joseph's eyes narrowed. "Where?" "Two men from Lagos, asking questions. Already been to the yam seller and the palm oil trader." Joseph exhaled slowly, his voice cold. "Make sure they don't get near her. I'll handle the rest." At dawn, a firm knock rattled the hut door, not the friendly knock of neighbours. Deliberate. Heavy. Joseph was already standing near the door with his hunting bag. He didn't answer immediately. He listened. The knock came again. Then a voice. "We're looking for a man called Joseph." Amara frowned. "Who are they?" Joseph's voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Stay inside." He stepped out and shut the door behind him. Two men stood there in neat city clothes, polished shoes, eyes sharp as knives. "We've heard about you, Hunter," one said with a smile that held no warmth. "New face, quiet, but efficient." Joseph said nothing. The second man stepped forward. "We're looking for someone. Name's Jabari. We know he's here. We know he's hiding." Inside the hut, Amara's heart skipped. Jabari? The name echoed in her mind. Joseph's voice was flat. "Never heard of him." The first man tilted his head. "If you see him, tell him. The debt for his father's life is still waiting." For a second, Joseph's eyes flickered, rage buried deep, but his voice stayed even. "I don't deal in other people's debts." The men stared at him, then finally walked away. Only when they disappeared did Joseph re-enter the hut. "They were looking for someone else," he said casually. "Nothing to worry about." But Amara wasn't convinced. You looked like you knew them." Joseph picked up his knife, avoiding her eyes. "I don't know anyone like that." The next market day was worse than all before. Amara hadn't wanted to go, but Joseph pressed the bowl into her hands. "It will keep you busy," he said gently. She knew no one would buy, but she went anyway. The whispers began the second she entered. "There she is, the hunter's witch. Guard your goods." She clenched her jaw and walked faster. Then, like clockwork, Agnes's shrill voice rose again. "Look who came crawling back. Tell me, Amara, how's life in the bush? Or have you started casting spells on your husband too?" Joy giggled. "Careful, Mama. If she gets angry, she might make your roof collapse." Laughter spread like fire. Amara tightened her grip and turned to leave, but before she could, two men blocked her path. Her breath froze. The strangers, the ones from Joseph's door. "Where's your husband?" one asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Amara's pulse raced. "He's hunting." The man tilted his head, mocking. "Strange, for a hunter he knows more about city matters than animal traps." Gasps, whispers, curious stares. Agnes leaned forward eagerly. "Old friends, what are you talking about?" The man smirked. "Let's just say, your hunter isn't who you all think he is." The market erupted. "No wonder she's strange. He's hiding something. She's cursed, and so is he." Amara's face burned. "Leave me alone," she snapped, voice breaking. The man laughed cruelly. "Or what? Will your magic make me disappear or sick too?" The crowd howled. Someone shouted, "Careful before she turns you into a goat." Then a heavy shadow fell over them. Joseph. He stood there, still as stone, his eyes locked on the strangers. The laughter drained from the market. "You're far from home," Joseph said, his voice low and dangerous. One man smirked nervously. "We're just here to talk." "You talked," Joseph cut in. "Now leave." The other tested him. "Or what?" Joseph stepped forward, just one step, but it carried the weight of someone who had commanded fear before. The crowd scattered back instinctively. The men exchanged a glance, then left without another word. Only when they were gone did Joseph turn to Amara. Her eyes were wide, not just in fear, but in realization. She had just seen a part of Joseph no one else in Riverbend had ever seen. Without a word, he took the bowl from her trembling hands and led her away from the market. And this time, no one dared stop them. When Amara and Joseph finally reached the hut, the silence between them was louder than a market quarrel. Amara kept her eyes on the dusty floor, biting her lips. At last she muttered, her voice almost breaking, "You didn't have to come for me." Joseph placed the basket down slowly, his face unreadable. "Amara," he said quietly, "I will always come for you." She looked at him, desperate to read his heart, but his eyes shifted away as he busied himself with his hunting bag. The air between them was heavy, like a drum waiting to explode. Too many questions in her chest, but her courage stopped at her throat. By morning, Joseph had already gone into the bush. Amara sat alone on the mat, her thoughts chasing themselves in circles. At last, she tied her wrapper tightly and decided to walk to the market. Just a quick trip for salt, she told herself. In and out, no time for trouble. The square was most empty. The late sellers were packing up, and a few boys kicked around a plastic ball, their laughter echoing faintly. Amara moved fast, hoping no one would notice her. Then, two men stepped out from the Armgrove path, the same city strangers. Their smiles were at the top of the night. Evening Hunter's wife, one drawled, bowing mockingly. Walk us. Amara froze. I'm going home. Then we'll walk with you. The second one said, we want your husband to see our faces. Before her heart could beat twice, a soft whistle pierced the air. Amara turned, her breath caught. Joseph was already toward them, arms slow but carved from stone. His eyes slid over her, then men. Tall stranger grinned. There he is. We've been waiting for you, Jabari. The name hit like thunder. Amara's knees almost gave way. She looked at him in shock. Jabari? Joseph didn't flinch. But from the shadows around the square, more whistles answered. Shapes emerged, men she had never seen before, dressed plain but moving with soldier-like discipline. They formed a wide circle, silent, their presence thick as smoke. Boss, one of them said. Amara's stomach turned. She had heard it clearly. Boss. The city men blinked at the ring of strangers, their smiles fading. So this is it? You're hiding behind a village? Joseph's voice was low, but it cut like a blade. You crossed the line the moment you came near my wife. The whole square stilled. Even the boys stopped their ball game. A lantern flame nearby trembled, as if the air itself was afraid. The shorter stranger tried to act bold. This isn't your city, Jabari. You don't give orders here. Joseph took one slow step forward. The circle of his men shifted like tightening chains. Leave Riverbend tonight, Joseph said coldly, and never return. The taller man clenched his jaw. His eyes darted to the circle, then back to Joseph. He spat in the dust, retreating. This isn't over. It is, Joseph said flatly, for your sake. The men stormed off, muttering. The circle melted back into the shadows like ghosts, but nothing felt normal again. Amara was shaking. She whispered, almost choking on the words, Jabari, who are you? Joseph looked at her then, his eyes heavy with pain. Let's go home. That night, the hut's small lamp burned low. Joseph sat by the doorway, his shoulders bent in a way Amara had never seen before. Finally, his voice broke the silence. My real name is Jabari, he said. Months ago, my father was killed. I inherited his business. It's not clean, Amara. It's not simple. Dangerous men are after me. I came here to hide, to set a trap for the ones who destroyed him. Amara's throat tightened. So you married me just to hide better? His eyes shut. His voice dropped. At first, yes. I needed a quiet life, a wife, a small hut that made me invisible. I told myself it was to protect you too. Her chest burned. She stood, pointing at him with trembling fingers. You chose me because I was abandoned, because I was poor, because nobody would ask questions if I disappeared. His voice cracked. I chose you because you were kind. His eyes glistened. I saw you once giving bones and liver to a beggar. I saw you carry firewood for an old woman no one else would help. I thought I could keep my heart out of it, but I failed. I waited for your footsteps at the hut. I thought of what you would eat before I thought of myself. I started to breathe easier when you smiled. It stopped being a plan, Amara. Her tears fell hot. You should have told me. I wanted to be part of your battles, part of my husband's world. Instead, you turned me into your shield. You let them call me a witch while you hid in silence. You betrayed me with that silence. Joseph's voice trembled. I was trying to carry the danger alone. Silence is not protection, she snapped. It's betrayal. Before he could speak again, she wrapped her cloth tighter and stormed out. Joseph didn't stop her. He only whispered, Amara, don't walk the night roads. But she didn't look back. The village was hushed, the moonlight heavy. Amara sat on the river's flat stone and broke. Every insult, every day of humiliation, every confusing kindness, all spilled out in sobs that shook her body. From the trees, Marcus, Joseph's shadow, watched silently. His orders were clear. Protect her, but let her choose. Footsteps approached, familiar ones. "Amara," Joseph's voice came, softer than she'd ever heard it. "Don't," she whispered, her voice raw. "I trust you. Get me a scheme." He sat near her. "You are right to hate me, right to walk away. I deserve your silence." She turned, eyes swollen, voice breaking. "Then why did you follow me?" His answer came heavy. "Even if you hate me, I must keep you safe." Her chest twisted. She opened her mouth, but the world tilted. The stone slipped beneath her. She gasped and fell. "Amara!" Plunged, catching her just before her head hit the rock. He scooped her up in his arms, his heart hammering. "Marcus!" he shouted. "The truck, now!" They drove into town like fire, chasing them. Joseph never let go of her hand, whispering her name as if it was the only prayer he knew. At the hospital, a nurse checked her pulse while a doctor with calm eyes leaned in. After a long pause, he straightened. "Stress," the doctor said. "Exhaustion." And he looked at Joseph. "She's pregnant." Joseph's breath escaped like a man stabbed. "Pregnant?" The doctor nodded. "She needs peace, food, rest, nothing less." That night, Joseph sat by her bedside, watching her chest rise and fall. For the first time since his father's death, Jabari, Joseph cried. Not with noise, not with pride, just enough to wash the dust off his hardened heart. When Amara opened her eyes, the room didn't feel like the noisy old house of Agnes, where quarrels were served daily like... No. For a second she thought she died and woken up in paradise, until she spotted Joseph by the window, phone pressed to his ear, talking in that cold voice of his. "Not anywhere near the village," he was saying. His back was turned, but his words were sharp enough to cut glass. "Close the road, shut the port, pay whoever we owe. If they dare show up again, we end it quickly. No chaos in Riverbend, no fire near her. Do you hear me? This ends tonight." He dropped the call and turned around. His eyes met hers, and for once that iron face of his looked tired, human. "How long have I been out?" Amara's voice was barely a whisper. "Since yesterday night," he answered softly. "The doctor said it was stress. Then," after a pause almost awkwardly, "and we're having a baby." Her hand shot to her belly. A shaky laugh escaped her throat and tangled itself with a sob. "A baby? You're serious?" Joseph's mouth curved to the tiniest, most sarcastic smile. "Unless the doctor is running a comedy show, yes. A baby. If you still want me in your life, that is." Amara stared at him, her eyes narrowing like she was scanning him for lies. "Did you finish whatever it is you were busy spilling?" He nodded once. "By the time you leave this bed, it will all be handled. I won't bring trouble into your house again. I can't rewrite how we started, Amara, but I can control what comes next." Her gaze lingered on him. "Then tell me everything." And for the first time, Joseph, no, Jabari, the man behind the disguise, spilled it all. He told her about his father's murder, about the vow he made at that grave, about the men who called him boss, but who never knew he cried like a lost child at night. He told her about the debts he paid in secret in the city to people who had betrayed him, and about the many nights he sat outside her hut like a stray dog guarding something too precious to lose. Then came the part that broke her heart wide open. The first day he saw her. How she had added liver to a bone bag without knowing he was starving. How he had said, "Thank you," and it had scratched his throat like truth. He told her about every loaf of bread, every small kindness, every apology wanted to give but swallowed back like hot pepper. When he finished, silence filled the room. The machines hummed, a bird pecked at the window, and Amara wiped her face with the back of her hand. "You should have trusted me," she said quietly. Then, with a sigh, "But I hear you now." "Can I earn you?" His voice was low, almost begging. She looked at her belly, then back at him. "Start by never lying to me again. I swear." "Good. Now sit down. Hold my hand. We'll face the morning together." Weeks later, when the doctor finally discharged Amara, Riverbend witnessed a wedding it would never forget. The marriage they once had. This time it was loud, proud, and full of drama. They married in the open field by the big oak tree. Drummers thundered from 3 towns. Elders nodded under canopies, pretending not to be jealous. Women danced so hard their wrappers flashed like river water. And Jabari did not hide anymore. He paid the bride price in full, then shocked everyone by doubling it to support poor widows. He went from house to house, apologizing where his silence had hurt people. But then, of course, the villains of Amara's past showed up late. Agnes, her husband Chief Patrick, and their two spoiled children, Joy and Daniel, dressed like guests of honour, strutting as if the wedding couldn't begin without them. At the gate, the guards stiffened. "We're family," Agnes snapped, nose in the air. "Your names are not on the list," the guard replied without blinking. "We raised her," Chief Patrick barked. The guard's face didn't move an inch. "You sold her." Boom. Just like that. Door slammed in their faces. They were denied entry. No tears, no pity. The drumming didn't pause, the food didn't stop steaming, and inside, Amara's trembling hand rested inside Joseph's palm as they smiled through it all. After the wedding, Joseph moved her to the city. His mansion was wide and bright, with tall trees, cameras, guards on patrol, and roses lining the front yard. Heavy gates kept enemies out, but laughter filled the inside. For once, Amara lived without fear. At night, Joseph walked the halls like a man who had finally put down the weight of 1,000 battles. He still had enemies, but he drew a line around their home and named it peace. And then came their daughter. A baby girl with warm brown eyes and a stubborn mouth, just like her mother. They named her Glory. The first time Amara held her, she wept into her baby's soft hair. You are proof that pain can still give birth to something beautiful. Joseph stood by the bed, one finger under the baby's tiny palm. His voice was firm, but his eyes betrayed the softness of a man who had finally found a reason to live. "From today," he whispered, "our life will be built on truth, nothing less." Amara looked up at him, her lips trembling into a smile. "Then we are safe." He nodded. "Yes, my love, we are safe." Hello, my beautiful viewers. Thank you so much for watching this story to the end. Life teaches us that no matter how dark the past is, love and truth can still build a brighter tomorrow. Don't forget to like, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me in your own language what part of Amara's journey touched you most. And of course, subscribe and stay tuned for more mind-blowing stories. Love you all.